back to Guerrilla Politics. I'm Dale Jackson. With me, as always, Dr. Wayman Burke. He's my co-host of this program. Our guest this week is Dr. Will Boyd. He is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor on the Democratic side of the aisle, running against Will Ainsworth in November. Dr. Boyd, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You ran for Congress,
yes, sir.
And now you're running for this seat.
Yes, sir.
What makes you want to jump in here? What makes you want to be the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alabama?
Well, actually, as I ran for Congress, crossed the 5th Congressional District, and then ultimately crossed the whole state, people asked if I would really consider running for a constitutional office because they really felt that I could be a person who could lead Alabama forward. So that's why I'm in the race at this time.
Now, you are running a statewide race. Democrats and Republicans, there's been some polling done recently. It's actually tightened up a little bit. Almost every Democrat's running about 40%. Every Republican's running about 55%. How do you close that gap? Is that the built-in disadvantage that Democrats have, and how do you close that gap?
First of all, there are some flaws with the poll. I'm excited about the poll. At least it shows we're in the game, we're doing well. Walt Maddox is at 42%, I'm at 41%. You have behind me the Attorney General and as well others down the ticket. I think it's interesting that it shows that obviously we're doing a great job getting the message out. The concern I have about the poll, realistically, is that it did not poll a significant number of African Americans. We only saw where landlines were touched rather than mobile phones. But for the most part, it's still exciting. It shows that we're on the map. We're doing a great job.
Well, it shows the earlier gap that they showed closed significantly. It shows there's a fight and there's a possibility.
Actually, I have the narrowest gap. If you look at all the candidates at the constitutional level, Will and I are closest in terms of our race.
Does the Doug Jones election in 2017 give false hope or real hope?
I think it gives real hope. Realistically, we know there were some other variables that went into play. You had many write-in votes. Obviously, you had a flawed candidate. We should not take that for granted. We should go in fighting as much as we can, realizing that Doug Jones 2.0 would be a great thing for Alabama, but obviously we have a lot of work to do.
Okay, Dr. Boyd, Dale and I discussed this in an earlier segment, and that is about the prospect of sports gambling in the state of Alabama and the fact that it's not being discussed. What is your take on it? What is your stand on it? Why do you think that it appears that neither D's nor R's are interested in talking about this?
Well, I think not only should we hear about sports gambling, I think we should hear about the education lottery. It's not the only solution to the problems we have, but we have to look at other ways to bring revenues into the state. Right now, we have many groups that are doing a great job. I spoke to the governor's group of tourists or travel tourism this week and explained how they benefited the state, how they bring many people to this state who spend quite a bit. It's a $5 billion industry. I think we have to look at our tax structure, our tax code. I know we have that 1901 Constitution that's just a bear to work with, but we have to look at personal exemptions, standard exemptions, the child-dependent exemptions. We have to go back and look at where we're progressive and where we're regressive and try to look at new revenue streams. But I definitely say we need to be talking about that. I hope that these two issues are actually on the ballot this year.
Okay. Also, the office of Lieutenant Governor, the power of it has been gutted in the past 2 decades or so. What would you do to try to make the Lieutenant Governor's position more of a player in this entire process?
I think it's still a big player. The Lieutenant Governor appoints at this point in time 400 individuals to 167 different agencies, committees, commissions, etc. You're still the President of the Senate. That's the only stopgap we have if you have a supermajority, one party trying to push some legislation through. So Senate Bill 88 was an attempt to gut it even further, but obviously that didn't pass. And I think the Lieutenant Governor's role is a very strong one that can very much influence politics in Alabama.
I like that answer because it's very true, and I think a lot of people don't understand how much power the Lieutenant Governor's office has. It's also, as we all know, next in line for the governor's mansion. Let's talk real quick. You brought up the education lottery. I hear this a lot. This is one of my biggest problems with this particular issue. If we argue the $6 billion education trust fund is not enough, if we argue we have the big problems with the general fund as well, why, when you say education trust fund, are you talking about a new spending for college education, or are you talking about taking money and pumping it into the current Alabama education trust fund? When you say education lottery, what does that mean to you?
A lottery that specifically is going to, I should say, in a restricted manner, bring revenues only to the education trust fund's needs. Right now,
So not a new spending program
No,
that
sir.
does scholarships and stuff like that.
Well, we want to make sure pre-K is fully funded. Right now, we know 29% of our pre-K students.
But you know, I don't mean to interrupt you, because actually that's the right answer. Not the right answer, but that's what I like to hear, where it's like, okay, here's where it's going to go.
Sure.
Do you think in order for that to actually happen, that there's going to have to be a drilled down purpose for it? Like you would say, give me an education, a lottery is going to fully fund pre-K. That's where the money's going to go. Boom.
Yes.
Or if they go vague and big, or everyone gets a piece.
No.
Okay.
I don't agree with that model, nor do I agree with proration going the opposite way, trying to shrink every budget at the same time. We have to be specific. We know that pre-K returns for every $1, $7 back to communities. Actually, $3 back to every residential home, and even $13 back to to every piece of property that's out there for every family. So we have to make sure we look at the advantages all the way around for pre-K. Long term, we've been doing well. 12 years in a row, pre-K has been number one.
My last question, and I think we're running out of time here. Democrats have been running on this lottery for a long time. They haven't really been able to gain any traction with it. Is there a danger pushing that again?
No, I don't think there's a danger pushing it. We just talked about sports gambling and the lottery. However,
I'm a different type of conservative.
my model is actually one where I don't rely on the lottery at all. And I think we have to look at our revenue streams to make sure we accomplish our
There
objectives.
you go. Will Boyd, thank you very much for being here. He's running for Lieutenant Governor. We're going to continue to have candidates on for all sorts of different offices as we move through this election season. We'll make sure we get as many of them on as can. If you're a candidate, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the program. Stay tuned. We got a lot more coming up here on